Hi, everyone. We're going to get started with today's Maine SBDC webinar, Turning Your Side Hustle into a Business, with Center Director and Certified Business Advisor Shannon Byers, who is here through Maine SBDC at CEI. We have an incredible turnout today, so we're really excited that you're all here. A little bit of housekeeping, we are asking that you stay muted throughout the presentation. We're gonna have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, and if need be, you can unmute yourself at that point. In the meantime, please submit any questions that you have in the chat. We'll be cycling through that towards the end as well. Also, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. This is a great networking opportunity. We have people from across the state. So if you wanted to let us know where you are located, maybe what industry you're in, but what your side hustle is, like what transition. We could have a lot of accountants turning into fiber artists. We don't know what you're doing out there. So let us know a little bit about yourself. I will also be sending out a follow-up email after this that will include the slides from today's presentation, as well as a link to the recording. So if there's anything you need to go back to, or if you need to leave early, that will all be available. Like I said, please stay muted and submit all of your questions via chat, and we will circle back towards the end if we don't get to your answers. Otherwise, I think I will pass the mic over to Shannon. I don't know how to do
that. Thanks, Kelsey. Welcome everyone to this session about turning your side hustle into a business, a topic that I'm very excited to talk about. And just a little bit of background on me. So I'm the Center Director at the Small Business Development Center at CEI. And so the Small Business Development Center, we're a nationwide program. Each state has its own program. And so here in Maine, we have about, I think, 18 advisors. We've added a few additional advisors with the CARES Act funding. So I think we're up to 18. And we cover the entire state of Maine. So there is a small business development office located near you. And I'm at the Small Business Development Center at Coastal Enterprises. And Coastal Enterprises is a CDFI, community-based lending institution. And we offer additional resources in addition to business advising. So we have credit counseling. So if you have some issues with your credit, you want to improve your credit, we have counseling for that. We have our workforce development team. If you grow your business and you start hiring employees and need some help with that. We have lending, and we have a wicked fast loan that might apply to people on the call today. That is really meant for people that are looking to really get some funding quickly for a startup or an existing business. And we also have agriculture and aquaculture specialists on hand if that's your area that you're interested in. So today I'm going to talk about turning your side hustle into a business. And my background, I had a career in the biomedical field for almost 20 years. During that time, I went back to school for an MBA and realized I was an entrepreneur. So started my first business while I was working full-time and going to school. And that business grew and was successful to the point where it became a full-time job, and I ended up selling it. And then shortly after started my second business. That one went a little differently. It ended up just turning back into a hobby and didn't develop into a business. And then I always have a little side hustle going, and happy to share more details as we go on that. So today we are going to cover, I'll start with, let's see, there we go. Just to get our vocabulary on the same page, we'll talk about the difference between a hobby, a side hustle, and a business. And then we're really going to spend the bulk of the time talking about how to determine if your business idea is the right one for you. And I'm going to use this three-legged stool approach. And then the last piece, we'll talk about the practical steps, like how do you actually go through and start a business. And then we'll have plenty of time for a question and answer at the end. So as Kelsey said, go ahead, put your questions into the chat, and we'll have plenty of time to go over those. So we'll start right in with a hobby. When I think of a hobby, it's something that we do for enjoyment or relaxation, stress relief. You really put as much time or as little time into it as you want, and you do not generate any income or revenue from those projects. And there's really not very many pain points that you encounter with a hobby. Now, the next step is what we would consider a side hustle. And now a side hustle, the purpose is to generate some income and maybe to test an idea, kind of dip your toes into the water and say, is my hobby, you know, a good idea for a business? The amount of time is going to vary based on how much you want to put into it. And you might generate some sales, but you may or may not cover all of your expenses or generate enough profit for it to be sustainable on its own. Typically a side hustle, you have a full-time job or a partner that has a full-time job in the household. And there might be some pain points associated with a side hustle, mostly around trying to balance a full-time job and a side hustle at the same time. And then lastly, we have a business, and the purpose of a business is to generate profit. Without profit, the business is not going to be able to sustain itself or grow over time. The time that you have to put into a business is a lot. Weekends, evenings, holidays. You know, somebody that's running a business well can make it look really easy. And I think we forget about just the amount of time that goes into keeping a business going. And if successful, the business should generate enough to pay yourself and to produce some profit, again, to keep the business going and growing. And the pain points, lots and lots of pain points. You know, most people go into business because they like a certain aspect of it. And then there's all these other pieces that go along that aren't necessarily that enjoyable, but still have to be done. So for example, tracking your expenses, taking care of taxes, managing people, or the one I hear the most, sales. A lot of people do not like to sell or be salesy around their product or service. So that one can be a challenge. So I'm going to start off with a survey question. And I'm curious, what's your current situation? And so Kelsey's going to put up a little box that'll come up with the survey. And we have 4 choices for you. So the first is A, I have a hobby and want to grow it into a side hustle or business. B, I have a side hustle and want to grow it into a business. C, I have a business, but I want to make it legal or legitimate or whatever you want to call it. Or D is going to be other. So again, Kelsey's going to go ahead and put a poll. You should have a poll pop up on your screen, and you'll be able to click the box. So I see some of you putting your answers into the chat, but Kelsey just got the poll up. So go ahead and click your answer of A, B, C, or D. Okay, just a few more seconds for everybody to vote. Looks like about 85% of you have got your answer in. So we'll give it just a couple more seconds. And then go ahead, Kelsey, you can turn the survey off and let's see what everybody responded with. Excellent. So you guys can see the answer for everybody on the call. Looks like the majority of you have a hobby and want to grow it into a side hustle or business. And then we have some others that have side hustle and want to grow it to a business. And some, a small number, but have a business and want to make it legal. And then some on the call as other. So great. So this is what we're going to go over today. I'll just close that. All right, so there's lots of different paths that you can take. You can have a hobby that just stays a hobby, and that's perfectly fine. You can have a hobby that just proceeds to be a side hustle, or you can have one that goes all the way to be a business. There's really no right or wrong. And you might decide, I'm going to keep my hobby separate. I'm going to keep that as enjoyment, and I'm going to, start a side hustle and turn that into a business. Or you can have other options for starting a business. So for example, some ways that you might become a business owner without, doing a hobby or side hustle or a startup. You could purchase an existing business. That would be an option for finding a business that you're interested in and buying it that's already up and running. You could become a franchisee and do a franchise, or you could partner with someone else. So if after today you say, you know what, I really don't have a good business idea, these are some other ways that you can find businesses that might fit your need. And then I'll just talk very briefly on this, but where business ideas typically come from. And they usually come from identifying a problem or a need that you feel strongly that you want to solve. And so that's a key piece in it, that you want to solve it, and that you found this problem. So a lot of times those problems are problems that you face individually, or problems that you see others facing, or even problems that you foresee coming. So for instance, with COVID, there's lots of problems that people are solving around PPE, or around ways to, do online ordering for items. So looking to see what problems are out there can usually be a good place to start to come up with a business idea. And I remind, you of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a place where you can also find kind of inspiration for ideas to come up with a business. So on the bottom of that pyramid are the needs that people need, the very basic needs. And then as you go up, as you get your physiological needs met, then you move on to safety and up the pyramid. So for example, water is a very basic need for everyone. And if you can think about all the different products and services that come specifically around water. So water bottles that we all carry to have water with us, to the little drops that you can add to flavor your water. So you can think about the different needs that people have and how you might develop a product or service around those. So this is the three-legged stool. And I'm going to use this as a framework to really talk about the different pieces of a successful business idea. And this framework can be used for two different things. One is to evaluate a business idea. So if you have an idea and you're like, is this a good idea? You can run it through this, or you can use it to generate business ideas. And this is actually how I ended up developing my first business idea that I had. And I basically said, what do I have for skills and knowledge? And at the time, the skills and knowledge I had were all around animals. So I had a degree in pre-veterinary medicine. I had a master's in animal science. I had a lot of hands-on working at a veterinarian hospital. And I thought, I had some skills there. And then I had some meaning and enjoyment. I really like dogs. And then I thought, I can make some money on something. And I settled on, I can go to people's houses that have dogs and trim their dogs' nails. And that was where I started. And I also had the vision of developing a product line around taking care of dogs' feet, basically. And we'll talk more about it, but that was the original business idea. Of course, I adapted and it morphed from there, but that was how I came up with the original piece. And so we're going to talk about skills and knowledge to begin with. So when we talk about skills and knowledge, that would be helpful to start with an example. So if we think of a coffee shop, and if you are, really good at preparing specialty coffee drinks and you want to open a shop, that's great. Like, you've got some of the skills and experience already. Now, the piece I think that you also have to consider is all those other tasks that go along with operating a coffee shop. So dealing with vendors, customers, employees, leading and managing people, managing inventory, cleaning and maintaining equipment, doing the sales and customer service, paperwork, and the list goes on and on, down to mopping the floor. And so when we think about a business idea, we want to think about, the piece we really like and that we know how to do, but then also all these other pieces that come along with that. And so there's skills that are specific to your business idea. So, specifically, can you make that product or can you provide that service? That's like the number one. Can you establish yourself as an expert in the field? Will people come to you for this product or service because they know you're really good at it? You might think about certifications or education that you might need, or courses and trainings that will help you develop the skills that you need. And then, of course, natural talents, and just taking inventory of what you have for natural talents. And if you have skills or knowledge that are lacking, think about where you can get them. One of the best ways is to go work for somebody that's running a similar business. Get a part-time job there, work a couple, hours on the weekend and just see what it's like. And of course, schools and classes and workshop, and develop those skills that are necessary, specific to your business. The second set of skills is more around managing the business. And this is where, this is essentially why we exist as advisors, because most people are able to develop the skills that they need to manage the operations of the business. But when it becomes, the piece about managing the business itself, that's like a whole added piece onto it. So planning and bookkeeping, marketing, managing people, leading people, communication, sales, time management, these skills, you can work with an advisor or a mentor to help develop those, but keeping in mind that these are skills that are necessary for managing your business. And then the last set of skills that are really important are just the general skills of an entrepreneur. And so an entrepreneur, in order to be successful, one of the top skills that they must have is tenacity. And that basically means that you are willing to continue working when things get rough, when things don't go as planned, that you're willing to push through. And so that's one of the top skills needed. Some of the other ones I have listed here, people skills. Can you get along with people, customers and vendors and bankers and other professionals you're dealing with. The ability to lead, a willingness to fail and not give up. As a business, it's really difficult to own a business and run a business, and you're going to fail. And so can you learn from that and move on and continue to improve what you're doing? And then the time to devote to the business. If you're, have a family, have a full-time job, have other commitments in your life, maybe now is not the time to start a full-time business on top of everything else. And on the other hand, maybe it is. So with COVID, I think we've been really surprised at the number of people that are starting businesses right now, which is really exciting. And I think we'll continue to see that trend as people have, time to devote to something that they've always wanted to do. It's important to be, creative, be able to solve problems and figure things out. To be independent, you'll be making a lot of decisions on your own, and just having that ability to push forward. And then there's this idea of risk. And I think when we think of entrepreneurs, sometimes we think, oh, they're big risk takers. And in reality, the good ones make calculated risks, right? They find the information, they get they listen to the numbers and are able to make calculated risks and not just jump into anything. So the next piece, I have an assessment for you, and there's too many people on the call to kind of walk through it and do the assessment right now, but you'll get copies of the slides. You can go back and watch this webinar. It's 25 yes/no questions, and you'll just go through, answer each question, and then at the end, count up your score. It'll give you a little assessment just about where you are as far as having the skills of an entrepreneur. So the first 5 questions are just general questions about, are you ready in general terms to start a business? Then there's a section on personal characteristics and just some questions about yourself. And then personal conditions, and are you prepared to kind of handle the stress and the workload of owning a business? Some questions on skills and experience. So it's just a basic little assessment, but I think it'll be helpful as you're thinking through starting a business. And then the scoring, I added in there so you can read what that score, the point system looks like. So I have some homework for you. That's what we do as advisors. We help you learn and give you the skills you need, but also walk you through how to do some of these things. So the homework for you is to really take an inventory of what skills and knowledge you have around the business idea that you're looking to start, and just make a list of what you have, and then make another list about what skills and knowledge you're lacking, and come up with a plan for how you'll get those. And then same thing for the business management skills. Have you worked, do you have customer service experience, for example? That could go there. And then make a list of the skills that you don't have and how you plan to get those. And then you can take the entrepreneur assessment. I did put the link there for you to go if you just want to go online and do it as well. So that's the skills and knowledge piece. The next piece is going to be around meaning and enjoyment. And this is a really critical piece. If this piece is missing, you're really not going to have a fun time owning your business or running your business. And so when we talk about meaning, enjoyment, sometimes people refer to it as passion. I have a passion for this thing or that thing, and that's why I want to do it. You can use whatever words you want that resonates. Could be the desire, the want, your purpose in life. But essentially, is this business something that you really want to do? And this is important because things, when they get hard, you can remind yourself about why you committed to starting this business in the first place. And if you can keep going back to that, it'll help you stick with it when things get rough. And so as I was thinking through this, trying to figure out, like, how do you determine what you enjoy or what's meaningful for you? And one of the tools that I've used in the past is this personal mission statement. And so we know businesses typically have a mission statement that they use, but you can also develop your own personal mission statement. And you might ask, how do I do that? So I'll go through kind of a Mad Libs version of creating your own personal mission statement. In this exercise, again, we don't have time to be able to go through it during this workshop, but you'll have this. And I would say, sit down and think through this, because I think it could be really useful. So there's 4 steps to creating this personal mission statement. And the first step is, from this list, you'll circle all of the verbs that resonate with you or excite you. And you can circle as many as you want. And then there's even some blank lines there. So if there's a verb that's missing, you can go ahead and add it as well. Now, once you've filled in or circled all the verbs that you like, now the hard part is you have to narrow it down to your top 3. And you'll have your top 3 verbs. The second step is similar, but this time the list contains values. So these are things that are important to you at the core of you. So what do you value the most? And again, you can circle as many as you want, but you'll have to narrow it down to your top 1. So that's a little bit more challenging. And then the last one, you're going to choose groups or causes that most attract you. And so there's some examples here. Again, add others if they're missing and narrow it down to your top 1. And then this is the Mad Libs part. So you fill in this mission statement and continue to refine it until it makes sense. So my mission is to plug in your 3 verbs, and then you'll put your value or 2 here, and then you'll put in the cause or move that excites you. And so if you fill those in, initially it might not make sense. You'll have to kind of wordsmith it a little bit until it makes sense for you. So here's a few examples. The first one is from Amanda Steinberg of dailyworth.com. Her mission statement is to use my gifts of intelligence, charisma, and serial optimism to cultivate the self-worth and net worth of women around the world. The bottom one there, which I like, is from Oprah Winfrey. Her mission statement is to be a teacher and to be known for inspiring my students to be more than they thought they could be. And this is interesting because it says nothing about being a talk show host or being an actress or any of the things that she does in life. But at the core of her, it's about teaching. So I think that's a really interesting, it's broad enough that it applies to the work that she is doing in her day-to-day work. All right, so again, some homework. And just a reminder, aligning your business with your personal statement, mission statement, can help you stick with that business when things get tough. And it can help you feel joy and a sense of purpose with that business. So your goal is to write your personal mission statement, but then also figure out, does it align with this business idea that you have? And if it does, that's great. And if it doesn't, is there a way to, either come up with a different business idea, or most mission statements will most likely align with your idea in some way.
Can I ask you a quick question, Shannon?
Sure.
I was late for the seminar, so can I have the slides sent to me somehow?
Yep, we'll send all the slides to the participants. It'll be right after the talk today.
The reason I joined this is because I run a business. It's the Whatever Shop. And I used to be in business on Route 17 at the old Abbott's Market in Augusta. But I'm going to open up at a new location. So I wanted to rewrite a new business plan and stuff. So that's why I wanted to join this.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them into the chat. We're going to do questions at the very end.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so the third piece for this three-legged stool is the financial feasibility. And the financial feasibility piece is, simply put, can you make money with this business to meet your financial needs? And that's key, right? So everybody has different financial needs, and not everybody needs to make a full-time salary from their business. So that's a key piece. So can it make the money that you need? And this is going to involve lots of different things there, from pricing, will customers pay what you're asking, your cash flow patterns, managing inventory, and a whole bunch more. So when it comes to this piece, definitely talk to an advisor. We can walk you through these pieces, for your specific business. But I'll go through just a couple of them, specifically cash flow. That's the tool we use the most. So for any product or service, it's always a good idea to get a rough estimate of how much can you charge for the item and how much volume can you sell. These pieces are really important for determining if that idea is going to be financially feasible. For pricing, it's important that you include not just your overhead and wages and cost of good, but also profit. So a lot of times the profit is the first thing they cut, but that's really important to be able to grow and keep your business going. So keep that profit in there, make sure it's part of your pricing model. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the pricing. We do have another video, a recorded webinar on our website specifically about how to price your products and services. So check that out. And then the other piece of this equation is the volume. Can you sell enough? Are there enough customers that need your service? And so, like my dog nail trimming business, there was probably enough customers. The problem is I was driving to their houses, and so I couldn't get to enough customers in one day to make that a profitable business. And in fact, I had to change the business model and figure, how could I make it financially feasible? The other piece of this equation is your personal financial position. Where do you stand financially? And if you are looking to start a business, now is a great time to get kind of your financial pieces in order. It's going to help you get better loan terms if you need a loan, and it's just going to help you support the business better. And so credit score and credit report are important to review. If you have debt, paying some of your debt down will be helpful. And then also thinking through what assets you might have that could contribute to helping you with the business. So do you have, property or a building or a vehicle, tools and equipment that can be used for the business? And then again, back to that, will the business meet my personal financial goals? And if not, how can I modify it? So we do offer free credit counseling through CEI. Just connect with an SBDC advisor at CEI, and we can connect you with our counselor if you wanted to have somebody to go through your credit report and give you suggestions on how to improve it. So the cash flow is, especially when you're starting a business, this is the most important financial statement. So I am going to spend just a little bit of time on this and talking about cash. So cash, the cash flow statement basically shows cash that's coming in and out of the business, and specifically when that money's coming in and out. And this helps you basically predict, what's the next 12 months going to look like if I start this business. And the cash flow projection is usually required if you're going to try to get some financing. So when we talk about cash in a business, cash can take different forms, and it flows through the business in these different ways. So you start with cash, you make some purchases, maybe you buy some equipment or some machines, and then you turn that, if you're making a product, you turn that into inventory, and then you sell the inventory, and then you have receivables and you get the cash back. So cash is like it's like the wind of a pinwheel. If the wind is blowing, the pinwheel is turning. If that wind stops, then the pinwheel stops, and then that's not a good thing for a business. So the cash has to keep flowing through the business to keep the business alive. And cash coming into the business can come from a few different ways. It can come from your pocket, right? So you can take some money out of your savings or checking account and put it into the business. You can take some debt, take a loan from a bank. You could sell a fixed asset, or operating profits. Operating profits are the best option, right? So we want the business to be generating some cash that can be put back into the business. Now, one of the issues with the cash flow of a business is it can get stuck in some of these different areas. So for example, you can have a lot of cash get stuck and tied up in purchases up front, especially with a startup, right? So if you're going to start a lawn mowing business and you need to go buy a truck and a trailer and 3 lawnmowers and all the other weed whackers and equipment that goes with that, now you have a lot of cash stuck in those purchases. And the goal is to get that cash moving around this cycle. You can also get cash stuck in inventory. So if you're not selling the items quick enough and you have a lot of inventory, that can be tied up cash for your business. And then accounts receivable. So if you have a business where you're billing people and they're not paying you and you're not going and collecting that money, you can also have cash stuck there. So that's why we look at cash so closely and why we care about it so much, because we need to keep it moving in order for the business to stay alive. So the next slide I'm going to show is an Excel spreadsheet that we use, and it's called the cash flows projection. And I've made this super simplified just for the purposes of this presentation, but I will send a link where you can go ahead and download one of these Excel spreadsheets and put your own numbers in. But essentially, a very basic and straightforward. At the top, you'll list the cash coming into the business. Okay, so you could break this down by type of job, you could break it down by product line, whatever makes sense for your business. And then for each month, you're going to try to predict how much cash will come into the business from those jobs. And I've plugged some just basic numbers in there. And if your business has some seasonality to it, you'll see some ups and downs with that cash coming in. And I also have a line for cash from owner, because with a startup business, the owner is typically putting some cash into the business. The next step is to make a list of all the expenses that will be paid from the business, and then going through and putting the amounts into the month where that cash is going to leave the business. I just plugged a couple numbers in there as an example. And then at the very bottom, this net cash monthly line is what we're going to examine to make sure that that cash is flowing through the business. And you'll see the numbers in parentheses are negative. And so in April, this business has $500 short, which is a problem because in January, February, March, it didn't have any extra cash to cover that negative 500. And so what we would do in this situation, we go back and we review and we say, okay, what could we do differently with this cash flow? One, the owner could put some cash in. So maybe the owner puts $500 in to cover that loss, or that $600 that's showing up as an expense in April is for accounting and legal expenses. Maybe we do our accounting and legal in May or June, and we push it out to when we're actually having some cash come in. So that's really basic overview of cash flow. Like I said, I'll share a link so you can go and get the template for yourself, and feel free to connect with a business advisor to help walk you through this. This is the template. So if you go to our SBDC website, you'll find a tab called Resources. And if you go in there and click on Tools and Templates, there's a whole bunch of different tools there, and cash flow is listed. And that's that spreadsheet we just went over. I put the direct link to it as well there. So homework to find out if your idea is financially feasible. The first is you want to determine the price for your products and services, and then estimate your sales for each month. And then also estimate your expenses, and then prepare a draft cash flow and evaluate it. Plug some numbers in, see what it looks like, talk it over with your advisor, and see what needs to be modified to make it a profitable business. So that's the three-legged stool. I mentioned my dog nail trimming business and how I learned pretty quickly it was not going to be financially feasible. And I said, well, I'm going to people's homes to trim their dog's nails. What else could I offer for a service? And I said, well, if I had a truck with a bathtub, I could also give them a bath while I'm there. I can bathe the dog. And I can even clean their ears and brush their teeth. And so that was the model I went with. And so I bought a truck and was able to make that work financially. And more to that story to come. So we're going to stop for a quick survey question again. So this one is, in a successful business, which leg of the three-legged stool can be missing? And so we have skills knowledge as A, B is meaning and enjoyment, C, financial feasibility, and D, none of the above. And it looks like everybody is voting. Kayla, you should have a poll that popped up in order to vote. If not, you might have, yeah. All right, it looks like almost everybody has voted. We'll give it just a couple more seconds. Excellent. Kelsey, you can go ahead and stop the poll and we'll share the results. Very good. So it looks like the majority had the correct answer. So none of the above. And so the three-legged stool, you know, if you remove one of the legs, the stool is going to fall over. And so that's why we use that analogy. Basically, you have to have all three of those in order for the business to succeed. And it's interesting, meaning and enjoyment was the one that people said we don't need to have. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So go ahead and close that poll, Kelsey. All right, so let's see what happens if you are missing a leg of the stool. So if we take out the financial feasibility and you can't make money with this business model, you have the skills and knowledge and you love doing that work, that is essentially a hobby, which is fine, right? There's no problem having a hobby. Just means that you're not going to make money with that one. Now, if we take out the skills and knowledge, and this is something that you really enjoy doing and you know you can make money on it, I would call that a dream at this point. The nice thing with this one, it's pretty easy to add the skills and knowledge, right? You can go out, you can get skills and knowledge. So at that, if you have the financial piece and the meaning, it's a dream at this point, but go get the skills and knowledge and you should be able to do that business. Now, the last one is, if you don't have the meaning and enjoyment piece, it's a job. It's a boring job though. And so if you have skills and knowledge and you can make money, it's boring. And like I said, running a business is hard. It takes a lot of creativity, it takes a lot of energy. Having that meaning and enjoyment makes it fun. Yeah, and some good comments there in the chat. So having that piece is going to help you as you run the business. Boring job. So the goal is to have all three, right? And if you have all three of those, then it's a pretty good business idea. And you've met the three-legged stool test and should be, one to pursue. So the last question we'll ask, which leg of the three-legged stool do you need to work on the most for the business idea that you're considering? So A, skills and knowledge, B, meaning and enjoyment, and C, financial feasibility, or D, none of the above. So go ahead and click on the poll. Which one do you think you need to work on the most? And the votes are coming in. And give it just another 5 seconds or so, Kelsey. And we're going to stop the voting. Excellent. So financial feasibility, that was the one that most people need the help on. And that's not surprising. That actually makes sense. So this is one that your business advisor can definitely help you with, thinking through the pricing, thinking through the business model itself, and whether or not there's a market for your product or service, and then figuring out how to model that out in that cash flow template that I showed you. Awesome. All right, thanks for that, Kelsey. Okay, so now we're just going to take a little bit, we're going to go through the practical steps to start a business. There's a lot to this, so I'm going to touch on kind of high level and then point you to some resources to help you with more details. And again, connect with an advisor. They'll help you walk through this. So the first resource that you can check out on our website, we have this booklet. You can download a PDF of it. Basically, it's a guide to starting a business in Maine, and we'll give you lots of details and resources. So that's free. You can go to our website at that link and grab yourself a copy of that. The first piece for a business idea is to do some market research. And market research does not need to be sophisticated or complicated. It's as simple as, what do people think about your idea? And asking around. And I would say, don't just ask your family and friends, because they're likely to say, oh, that's a great idea. Ask people that don't know you that well. Facebook is a great place to ask and get input from people you don't know. and people are usually pretty honest. The other option is to observe behaviors. This is a great way to see how people interact in ways that they might not know that they're interacting. So this is a way to just figure out, if somebody is using an umbrella and it constantly, the wind is taking it and turning it inside out, maybe you have an idea for a better umbrella. But thinking through the behaviors. Test the idea. So this is a great way to go out, see what people think of your product. Go to a farmer's market or a craft fair, Facebook Marketplace. You can sell items there. Pop-up shops typically are around the holidays or events. And so with my dog nail trimming idea, there's a lot of dog events in the state of Maine. We're a very dog-friendly state. And I went to dog events and I set up a little tent and I trimmed dogs' nails. And I talked to people about it and gained lots of insight and knowledge from that. And a side hustle is a great way to test the market while keeping your day job. So you keep your financial security while you go and test the market and see what do people think of your idea or your product. The next piece, I would highly suggest you build a team. And I've listed here, some people that should be on that team. You may only interact with these people once a year, twice a year, but they're still very important to have. And I've included, family and friends on that team because they're there to provide support for you. And you want the support of your family and your friends as you take this on. So your team, the first step as you're starting to think about forming an official legal business is to talk to your accountant, and they're going to help you decide which business entity is the best fit for you. So should you form an LLC or an S Corp? Should you stay as a sole proprietor? They can help you with that. And we had a webinar that's recorded, so it's on our site if you want to go and watch and learn about the different entities. That's a resource there as well. But your accountant is going to help you figure out, for your particular situation, which business entity makes the most sense tax-wise. So we always suggest starting with your accountant. And then from there, if you decide to just manage your business as a sole proprietor, which means you don't have a separate entity for the business, it's you personally, you basically visit your town office to register your DBA, your doing business as name with them. For the other entities, so if you decide I want to form an LLC or an S Corp or another business entity, we always suggest that you work with an attorney to file that paperwork with the state. The attorney is going to be a potential resource for you down the road if you need it. And if you have them file your paperwork, they'll be familiar with your business and you'll be able to work with them. They'll also make sure that your filings get done every year so that you don't forget to do them, especially if you get really busy running your business. Insurance is going to be important, so liability insurance for your business. And then, but depending on what type of business you have, you might have property or vehicle insurance. If you have employees, you'll have workers' comp insurance, and then you might have some industry-specific policies as well. And if you decide to hire employees, there's lots of additional tasks that go along with that. And I'm not going to go into those details today, but just know that your team can help you with those pieces. And then developing a business plan. Your advisor can help you with that. And we also have a guide on our website as well. And then funding, if you decide, you need to take out a loan, your banker is going to be a part of your team as well. All right, the next step is going to be establish your business identity, right? So people always, want to try to come up with a name that's catchy or, a name that makes sense. And I'm terrible at coming up with names, but the only advice I can say is don't name the business after the product or the service that you're offering on day one, because that may change over time. And so leave it somewhat broad so that you can change your service or product offering without having to change the name of your business. The next one is developing your brand, which is going to include your logo and the color palette and the color scheme that goes along with that. You can hire a graphic designer locally or work with an online freelance website such as Fiverr or 99 Designs that can help develop your logo. And then an online presence. So thinking about, the website, domain name, your Google business profile, the content of your website. That's something that you can be working on, as you're thinking through the business plan, and social media as well. And then as far as your financial piece, one of the early steps is to make sure you get a separate business checking account for the business and make sure all of your personal finances are separated from the business. And then make sure that you're recording all your transactions. And this can just be in a notebook, if you're just starting out, Excel or QuickBooks or other software, but make sure you're recording all the transactions. And establish a relationship with an accountant and also a bookkeeper. As you grow, a bookkeeper is a great way to delegate some of the work that that you don't necessarily want to do, or will help free up time so you can run the business. And then again, connect with an advisor that can help you review and understand the financials. So those are kind of the basics. And people often want to know, like, which one do I do first? What's the step-by-step? And there isn't really a step-by-step approach. It's like, I like this analogy about launching a rocket versus driving a car. So if we think about launching a rocket to the moon, every little step is mapped out. There's the countdown to the exact launch time. They know exactly, how fast the rocket's going to travel. They know when they're going to slow it down. Everything's very meticulously planned out. And probably 30 years ago, that's how we did business planning. Mm-hmm. Everything was planned out very perfectly, and then we executed it. And we launched, and it didn't work all that well. And now we know starting a business is more like driving a car. So you get in the car, you're going to travel from point A to point B, but you're not exactly sure what challenges you might run into along the way. You're not even sure when you might apply your brakes or when you might accelerate. If a car slows down in front of you, you might put on the brakes. If there's an accident, you have to take another road, you're going to adjust on the fly. So that's what it's like with running a business and starting a business. You're going to get in your car and you're going to figure it out. You have an idea of where you're headed, but you're going to adjust on the way. And so I really like that analogy. And I think if you can think of it that way, it'll help you to keep an open mind. Like, okay, just because I have this plan, I have to be flexible and be able to adapt if I need to. The other chart that I like to share with clients is the startup curve. And on the left is this happiness scale from a frowny face to a smiley face. And essentially, before you start your business, you're kind of neutral. And then you get this idea for a business, and you get super excited and you can't stop talking about it. And you go out and you do all this work. And then all of a sudden reality sets in and you go into this trough of sorrow, which sounds really depressing. But it's just really, reality sets in and things get hard, right? And maybe things didn't work as you planned. And the goal, or the takeaway for this is that you need to experiment and pivot, right? Be ready to adapt and change and figure out what starts working. And as things start working, then eventually you're going to get that product market fit. You're going to figure out, okay, this is what I can offer. This is what the market wants. This is a good fit. And then the business will grow. I think a lot of times people get discouraged, as soon as things don't go well or things get difficult. But this is where that tenacity, if you have tenacity and you're willing to push through it and stick with it, eventually you'll come out of this. But this can be really uncomfortable and it can discourage a lot of people. So I always say, you know, have a what if plan, have a contingency plan. And, you know, if things don't work out well, what are you going to do? Can you go back to your day job? You know, don't burn any bridges with your employer if you have an employer right now. You know, keep things on good terms with them. If things don't go well, can you sell some assets? And, you know, if the business is not succeeding, how can you change your business model? And so I had talked about my nail trimming business with dogs, how I decided to add a truck with a bathtub so I could then bathe dogs. And I wasn't on the road 3 weeks with that truck, and people started asking me, can you cut my dog's hair? And the first 3 people that called, I said, no, I'm not a dog groomer. And the next 3 people that called, I said, well, I'm not a dog groomer, but I'll try it. I'll cut your dog's hair. No guarantees on how it's going to look. And about 3 months in, I stopped telling people I was not a dog groomer. I had had enough training and experience. I went and watched YouTube videos, and I just stopped, you know, telling them I wasn't a dog groomer. That's how I became a dog groomer when I never set out to become one. I was really interested in, you know, pet health and taking care of the pets, so that that piece fit, and I was able to take an approach to dog grooming that was more about the health of the dog, not necessarily that they had this perfect poodle cut. And people in Maine responded to that. So that is my story about how to be, you know, adaptable and open to what the market is telling you. That is all I have for this. I'm going to share a few resources now as well. So the first one, if you've not visited this one, Maine Business Answers can be a great site if you're looking to make sure kind of you've done all the permitting and the licensing necessary for your specific business or industry. So it's a little walkthrough. You check the little box here, you click it, and it asks you some questions, and then it gives you some information about that specific industry. The next one is Coastal Enterprises page, which is my host organization. And we have lots of resources on here. We have a page specifically for COVID-19. So if you know of businesses that are dealing with COVID-19, there's some resources there. We do, and I don't have a screenshot of it, but under that applying for financing tab, you can learn about the Wicked Fast loan that I talked about. It's a credit score based loan. So you have to have a pretty good credit score to apply for it. But that's one of the financing options for startups that's out there. And then lastly, this is our SBDC page, which you've probably visited. And if you haven't clicked that orange button to request advising, you can click that and register, and one of our advisors across the state that's located near you will reach out and connect with you and see how we can help. So with that, I will happily take questions and from the chat. I guess that's the next.
Yeah, so there actually are not that many questions in the chat. So if you have a burning question right now, would be a good time to plug it in there. We do have an artist who is struggling to price herself of what she is probably worth. Do you have any suggestions? Like, I know as an artist with several side hustles, I have really struggled with pricing my work. And so coming from that creative side to the business side, how do we bridge that gap?
Pricing is really hard. And for, I think, artists and craftspeople, creatives, the piece that is typically ignored is the time and the labor associated with creating those. And I think it's a challenge, right? So if you price and you include your labor, typically it's a price and you're like, oh my word, nobody's going to pay that. And so artists will cut back their price, right? And so I guess my question is, for artists, it's about what is really special about what you do. and how is it really different than what else somebody else is doing. In Maine, we have a lot of potters, right? A lot of pottery. And I think that's a challenging field or industry to be in because there's so much there. But I recently saw these ceramic mugs or pottery mugs that were really different. They had like this little concave piece cut out, and then there was like a little raccoon inside there, right? And it was so different than everything else that you had seen. It was like, oh, that's really neat. So I think it's about differentiating yourself in making it so interesting that somebody's going to want to buy. So that's a big piece of it. And then finding your market. If your price is really high, you have to figure out who's willing to pay that for what you're doing. And they may not be in Maine. And I guess that's one good thing with COVID. Everybody's online now, right? So shopping online, even locally, right? So Maine, I shop online for things that are located just down the road, right? Just because of COVID. So there's an opportunity there, maybe to reach customers or clients that you hadn't reached before. But yeah, creative as an artist, it's a tough one for sure. I don't know if I have an easy answer there other than to really differentiate yourself in a way that people are willing to pay that extra.
That makes sense. Trying to unmute myself.
Yeah.
Mostly people are saying thank you. This was great. We do have some people who are starting online businesses, and we're wondering about PayPal. I lost the question. I'm sorry. I was trying to read it.
That's okay.
So yeah, so I guess are there any things to keep in mind if you're starting to accept some sort of online payment for the first time?
I didn't see the question come through, so if I don't answer this, just feel free to type it back in. I mean, PayPal is an option. PayPal is one that's, people are familiar with. I would consult with whoever's building your website, right? So the e-commerce platform that goes along with your website can be important. I personally like to have an option for clients. I mean, PayPal is a great place to start, but then if you have somebody that doesn't have a PayPal account, the goal is to make it really easy for your customer to pay. And if they get to your cart and they say, oh, it's only PayPal, and they abandon the cart, that's the last thing you want. So if it's easiest to start there, great, but I would say make sure you're thinking about your customer and how to make it easy for them to pay.
That makes sense. Any tips on balance when you have burnout and staying on track?
That's a tough one. I think I would say being an entrepreneur is very isolating and very lonely. And I would say find people to connect with, find other business owners. They don't even have to be in the same industry, but find other business owners through, is there a BNI group, or is there a group that you can connect with and just help each other? It's hard. It's tough running a small business. I mean, that's why you have to have that passion or that want to do it. Like, why are you doing this? Because it is really hard and difficult. And then, resources. I know there's a lot of resources to tap into. The Women's Business Center at CEI has some cohort groups where it's specifically for women, but there are some groups where you can connect, regularly and check in with each other and support each other.
Yeah, there's one question in here that's just asking if you're working with other agencies, can you still work with the SBA? And so in that case, it's like, yeah, a lot of us overlap, but a lot of these programs offer diverse information that you might not get otherwise. So definitely reach out to as many people for help as you can.
Yeah, and we're happy to, most of the services are free. So I'm like, take advantage of all of them. And I'm always happy to coordinate, bringing in other experts for my clients. So, if there's a SCORE mentor that you're meeting with and, you don't want to have duplicate meetings, I would co-advise and bring another advisor in. I'm doing that a lot lately with the hospitality industry. I don't have a hospitality background, but we have other advisors across the state that I'll bring in specifically to help with those. So happy to partner. Zoom is making it so easy to do this. Before COVID, we could never have done that. And we meet pretty regularly with all of the different programs in the state of Maine to try to stay up to date with what they're doing. And so we can direct you to them if it's not an area that we're familiar with.
Does this count as a career activity, career center activity? Because this is how I got this webinar.
Yeah, so for unemployment, these count towards self-employed business owners who are collecting unemployment.
See, I had to close my business up because of COVID-19. So I went to work doing something and I got laid off. But I plan on opening my business back up.
So in that case, you're going to have to reach out to your unemployment representative.
I don't have an unemployment representative.
Okay. We were also in touch with the Department of Labor about this because a lot of people were looking for a code or proof.
Yeah.
Ultimately, your registration email will be the proof if you are audited in the future. However, our understanding is that it only applies to self-employed people who are receiving unemployment.
Okay.
We have a question asking, how do you get a team? Where do you start?
I would start with your business advisor because for my clients, they typically want a local attorney, a local CPA, somebody they can connect with locally. So we're not allowed to make a recommendation for a specific attorney, let's say, but I do keep a short list that I provide to my clients that need that. And I have, web designers on there, attorneys, accountants, professionals, and, I can happily give that, of course, mine's Hancock County focused. But if you connect with the advisor in your area, they can point you in the right direction for those. Your Chamber of Commerce, another good resource that you might have in your area.
Yeah. This is a very specific question. When you register your sole proprietorship at town hall, does that info get recorded anywhere else or only at the town level?
I believe it's only at the town level. Yep. But you should check with your town office. Each town office is very different. Yeah. So like the city of Bangor might do something different than, a small town that has 500 people.
Mm-hmm. What else? A lot of good questions. Do you think that freelance writers would need to go through with setting up a sole proprietorship / DBA, etc.? I'm not sure what DBA is.
DBA is a doing business as, so if you are a writer doing freelance work, you can operate as a sole proprietor. The discussion I usually have around sole proprietorship is, what's the risk that somebody will sue you? So if you're a sole proprietor, then you personally are the business, which means if something happens, and I don't know about the writing industry, but if somebody were to sue you, they potentially could take your personal assets. And so this is why people set up a separate business entity so that if somebody were to try to sue the business, they'd sue the business and your personal assets would be protected. So that's one of the reasons. The downside is there's a cost, right, to forming that business entity, and you don't have to do it. So you can operate as a sole proprietor, but just keep in mind you don't have that protection. Your liability, you don't have that liability protection, and that's a call on your part, as far as your industry and whether or not you think somebody's going to sue you. For the dog grooming industry, you bet I formed an LLC. People love their pets, and I didn't want somebody to be unhappy with a haircut on their dog and sue me and take my house. So, but a writer, maybe there's not that risk. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
To me, they're welcome to circle back.
Yep.
We had another sort of personal, how do you handle friends and families who want discounted services or products?
That's a good question.
All those friends you asked for their input in now want the bag for free.
Right?
Now what?
It's tough, right? Because there's this weird misconception that if you own a business, you're rich. And people don't understand that that's not the case. I mean, it's a tough one when you're dealing with family and friends. And if you're bartering, that's one thing, right? So if you have a family or friend member that's like, hey, I can do graphic design, I'll design your logo, I'd give them some free product, sure. But if it's just a family member that just wants free stuff, I, have that conversation about, you can always use your business advisor as a good excuse. My business advisor says that's not good. I shouldn't be doing that. So you can't give away too much product if you want it to be a successful business. Save it for Christmas gifts.
Exactly. That's what I do, everyone.
Yeah.
We did have a comment that came in that someone suggested charging family full price, but giving some sort of extra or a bonus. So that could be one way to do that.
Yeah.
Another question that came in was around, well, we have another artist who was considering structuring their business as an LLC or a DBA. And we're wondering, I guess, which they should do. I don't know if that was part of that answer that you just gave.
Yeah, so with a sole proprietor, you end up having a DBA. So, or with any business, you have a DBA. So you have your legal name, right? So if I form, Dog Grooming LLC is my legal name, but I want my customers to call me, Shannon's Grooming. That's my DBA. So you have the legal name. It's like what's on your birth certificate. And then you got like your nickname, which is your DBA. So the nice thing with that is you can have an LLC. And if you need to change the DBA name, you can. That's not an issue. So if I started it as Shannon's dog trimming, nail trimming business, and then I turned into a dog groomer, I could just say, oh, I'm now going to call myself Shannon the dog groomer.
There are a lot of people asking for recommendations for different things, like platforms for building websites online, looks like liability insurance, those types of things. We are highly recommending you reach out for advising and speak with a business advisor specifically about those things. And then, like Shannon said, we can give you sort of a list of options within Maine. So what that might look like in terms of online building websites. There are a lot of like really easy, just like plug and copy and paste. I use Squarespace, WordPress, there's a whole bunch. So that has changed drastically in the last few years of really becoming much more accessible.
And the Google business profile, if you're not quite ready to have a website, you can go get your Google business profile and that'll show up on the right-hand side when somebody does a Google search, and then your business will show up. Even if you don't have a website, you can have that, which is really important, especially if you have a business, where people might search for something nearby, right? So it incorporates into the Google Maps and all of that. So that's free. They also have an add-on piece where you can do a free Google website. They're not beautiful, but they're at least a website page. So you have something online if you wanted to start somewhere that was like free and super simple, and then grow from there.
And then mostly just a lot of people saying good job and thank you. And then one last question that's pretty specific is that someone is starting up an Airbnb and they were wondering if they will need to have the building registered as a business or to keep it in a personal name.
I think for that one, yeah, I mean, you could there's a couple options, right? And I don't want to get it too complicated, but you could have the business owned by like a real estate holding company and then have your Airbnb a separate business entity. And there's some tax advantages to doing that I won't go into. But I would talk to your accountant and see what they suggest for that. Yeah, so you might end up having actually 2 business entities to make that work
There you go.
to your advantage.
It looks like we have a hand raised. Heather E, do you want to unmute yourself? Maybe. We're learning all these new options within Zoom.
That was an accident. I'm sorry.
Oh.
That's fine.
Thanks.
See, we're all learning. That's the point. Well, I don't see any other specific questions in the chat. If you have any, plug them in there real quick. But like I said, I will follow up very shortly with an email that will include the slides and a link to the recording of the session. So if there's anything you want to go back and check, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to do all your homework, get to those assessments. It will also include Shannon's contact information, but we're really recommending that everyone go ahead and submit a advising request if you want to have a dedicated business advisor. Shannon is fantastic, but sometimes it is better to have someone a little bit closer to you, and we have a pretty diverse location covered in this seminar. So keep an eye out for that email. Looks like 2 questions just came in real fast. What is the best way to send the products by mail? Oh, yeah, shipping is like a whole new world.
Oh, actually, that's a good one. So we have the Women's Business Center at CEI has a shipping consultant that we have access to right now. So who put that? I'm not sure, AKS, whoever that is. If you want to reach out to me, I can make that connection for you. And she's really good. Yeah.
And so Shannon's email will be in that follow-up email. Was your grooming business by chance called K9 Clippings?
No. You know, my business was called, and
is that your competition?
No, I don't know that. I'm not familiar with them. No, my business was called Best in Show Paws, right? And so I had started with the dog nail trimming, so I had the paws in there. Yeah, error number 1. So, because I ended up being a dog groomer with a name that did not make sense. Yeah.
But see, this is why we all are working together.
Right.
It looks like Elizabeth has raised her hand, and she looks like she's waiting very patiently, like it was on purpose.
Hi.
Hi.
Regarding artists, I recommend that you do not, you always think about starting at a good price with your artwork, because you can't like move down. I mean, you can only move down from there. So just start at a good price. And also consider, if you're in a gallery, the gallery is going to be expecting at least 50% of your sales, which is certainly appropriate. And so you want to price your work with that in mind as well. And so I wish every artist here lots of luck and have fun. Thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Great information. I'm definitely going to include the link to the pricing, services, and products webinar so that you'll have access to that information. I think Pete ran that one, but there's a formula in there for if you're selling wholesale versus to a store where you're getting a cut versus they're getting a cut versus a gallery. There's like a couple different options in there for different ways that you would price your work depending on the ultimate platform where it's being sold and that ending price. So make sure you're getting your money regardless of whatever price it ends up selling at.
Yes.
Awesome. Looks like everyone's questions were pretty much answered. Again, the more information about direct, like specific platforms to use online are going to be a little bit easier to discuss with a business advisor. So we recommend you reach out for that free business advising. Otherwise, have a lovely afternoon, everyone. The last question is, where would we find other seminars? And that is on our website, but all of the upcoming scheduled webinars will be in the follow-up email as well. So you'll have all the information you need. Otherwise, have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.